Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing The Shadow Throne by Jennifer A. Nielsen. This is the third and final book in the False Prince series, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Charlie McWade. I'm going to discuss my opinions about this book, so if you want to read it, go read the other books in the series, at least the first one, because that is the best one, and then come back to hear my opinions. So I had kind of a hard time getting through this book. It felt a lot slower than the other books, especially the first book had such great momentum, and you were always just so curious and wanting to know what Gerend was going to do next. And now this one felt very kind of rambling to me, and it felt like it didn't have a whole lot of plot. It was mostly just Gerend running from one battle to the next and from one weird situation to the next, and then it didn't really pick up momentum until the last about 2.5 hours of the book. After he turns himself in and you can tell he's got some kind of a plot going, then it picked up and the tone felt so much more like the first book to me, and I love that. You know, in the first book, Sage was so conniving, and he had secrets. He was an unreliable narrator. You didn't know he was really Prince Gerend until the end of the book, but you did know that he was planning something and that he was capable, and in this book, it felt like the book was trying so hard to convince you that he didn't have a plan so they could do the twist at the end and say, oh, he did have a plan all along and he's going to win, that he just felt kind of irresponsible and unprepared, and it wasn't really that interesting to watch his adventures. I thought the setup with Imogen being captured was kind of weird. They had it so that we know it's a trap, but it's a trap for Gerend, so we should send Mott and then he won't get caught. Or, oh wait, the trap is really for Mott, that means Gerend should go. And it seems kind of like a trap is a trap, and they didn't approach the situation with any amount of caution, and just because a trap is for one person doesn't mean it can't capture someone else if they come, and their whole mentality seemed a little weird. I also didn't believe for a second that Imogen was really dead. This is a young adult book, and Gerend needed a love interest, and because of the way we saw an arrow pierced her, and then she fell away, and everyone said that she had surely died. And then just in case there was any doubt in your mind that she was still alive, halfway through the book they had this whole conversation about, oh, what if she'd been alive? Well, if she'd been alive, they would have shown her to us. There's no possible way that she could be alive. And that just made it definite that she was absolutely alive. So then when you see her in the dungeon, it is no surprise at all. And you're like, oh yeah, of course she's there. Was expecting that. I did enjoy the story much more at the very end, when Gerend had turned himself in and you knew he had a plot and you knew something was up with the messenger he had sent, and that was so great. I was a little surprised that he didn't have more of a plan for approaching the gallows. He was just kind of like, we'll wing it. And I don't know how he managed to get Connor on his side, and it seems like he has this great talent for making everyone he meets just love him and immediately switch loyalties. And it seemed like he was banking way too much on having other people help him out and not enough on his own skill set. Although I did think it was really clever. You know, in the first book, right at the beginning, you know, Connor sits all the boys down and says, what will you do when faced with an opponent that you cannot possibly beat? And then Gerend says, oh, I would surrender and then wait for my opponent to lower his defenses and then attack. And they use that at the end of the first book, and then again in this book on a larger scale with the whole war. And that's his plan. He offers to surrender, and then he attacks. And it's just so funny that everyone keeps falling for that. And pretty soon that's going to become his personal motto. And everyone will say, oh, never believe Gerend when he surrenders, because he never means it. So I'm glad I read this book just to see how this series ended. Though I feel like the first book was definitely the best one, and if the ending of the first book had been tweaked just a little bit, it could have been a standalone novel and wouldn't have needed the other books in the series, and that probably would have been a much tighter story and with much more consistent characterization, but I still had a fun time with this series.